There are places on this earth so vast, so ancient, that they seem to predate memory itself. They are not merely features of a landscape, they are characters in our history, silent witnesses to the passage of time. They hold secrets in their depths, secrets that the modern world, with all its light and reason, has never managed to fully expose. Of all these places, few are as imposing, as beautiful, and as profoundly mysterious as Lake Superior. By surface area, it is the largest freshwater lake on Earth. It is so immense that it creates its own weather, its own tides. Its waters are famously, brutally cold, plunging to depths of over 1,300 feet. It is a place of breathtaking beauty, of sheer cliffs and pristine forests, a jewel of the North American continent. But beneath that stunning veneer, there is something else, something older. For centuries, those who have lived by its shores and sailed upon its waters have spoken of it in hushed tones. They speak of its moods, its sudden, violent temper. They talk of the ships it has swallowed whole, the lives it has claimed without a trace. They whisper of a feeling, the undeniable sensation of being watched, not by anything you can see, but by the lake itself. A feeling of an ancient, conscious presence, dwelling in the frigid, crushing darkness below. A presence that is patient, possessive, and does not welcome intrusion. Tonight, we journey to the shores of this great inland sea, to explore 5 of its most chilling and inexplicable mysteries. These are not simple tales of storms and misfortune. These are stories that hint at something more, something that defies easy explanation. They are accounts of vanishings, of strange phenomena, and of an enduring, unsettling feeling that something in the water is aware. These are the stories that point to an unseen presence. If you are drawn to the mysteries that lurk in the darkest corners of our world, then be sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell. You won't want to miss the chilling tales we have waiting for you in the shadows. Now, let the waves pull you in as we begin our descent into the mysteries of Lake Superior. Our first story takes us back to the late 19th century, an age of iron, steam, and unshakable confidence. All along the shores of the Great Lakes, industry was booming. Great forests were felled, and their lumber shipped from burgeoning port towns like Duluth, Minnesota. It was an era of manifest destiny on the water, a time when humanity believed it had finally tamed the wild spirit of these inland seas. No vessel embodied this confidence more than the tugboat known as the Invincible. She was a titan of her time, a powerful, steel-hulled ship built to haul massive rafts of timber across the often treacherous lake. Her captain, J.W. Johnson, was a seasoned veteran of Lake Superior, a man who knew its moods and respected its power, but did not fear it. His crew were just as experienced, hardy men who had spent their lives navigating these cold, clear waters. On November 27, 1898, the Invincible steamed out of Duluth, towing the massive barge James Mowat. The weather was calm, the lake placid. It was a routine job, one they had completed countless times before. But Lake Superior is a fickle beast. As night began to fall, the sky turned a bruised, sickly shade of purple. The wind, which had been a mere whisper, began to howl like a starving wolf. A blizzard, born in the heart of the Canadian wilderness, descended upon the lake with a sudden, shocking ferocity. The temperature plummeted. Snow, thick and wet, began to fall, reducing visibility to near zero. The waves, once gentle swells, grew into monstrous 30-foot walls of black water, capped with frothing white. The crew of the James Mowat knew they were in grave danger. In a desperate act of self-preservation, they cut the tow line, setting the Invincible free to fight the storm on its own terms. The barge, miraculously, would later be found, its crew having survived the ordeal, but the Invincible was never seen again. When the storm finally broke, search parties set out. They scoured the icy waters, the rugged shoreline, expecting to find something, a piece of wreckage, an oil slick, a life preserver. They found nothing. It was as if the powerful tug and her entire crew had been plucked from the face of the earth. In the weeks and months that followed, the mystery only deepened. Not a single trace of the ship ever washed ashore. No bodies were ever recovered. The Invincible had simply vanished into the fury of the storm. The official explanation was that the ship had likely capsized and sunk in the lake's abyssal depths, taking all hands with it. But for the sailors and residents of the port towns, this explanation felt hollow. Ships had been lost to storms before, but they almost always left a scar, some evidence of their final, violent moments. The complete and total absence of any sign of the Invincible was different. It was unnatural. Whispers began to circulate in the dockside taverns and sailors' homes. They said the storm that night was not normal. They spoke of the lake's anger, of an ancient hunger that sometimes needed to be fed. The name of the ship, Invincible, seemed like a boast, an act of hubris that the lake itself had decided to punish. They said the lake did not just wreck the ship, it claimed it, pulling it down into the crushing, eternal cold, leaving no trace behind as a warning. The Invincible became a ghost story, a cautionary tale about the unseen power that lurks just beneath the waves, a power that does not tolerate arrogance. The ghost of the Invincible is just one of many that haunt the depths of Lake Superior. The lake is a notorious shipwreck graveyard, with thousands of vessels claimed by its icy waters over the centuries. To combat this ever-present danger, a string of lighthouses was built along its rugged coast, lonely sentinels of stone and light, standing against the crushing darkness. The men who kept these lights were a special breed, accustomed to solitude and the relentless roar of the water, but some were subjected to an isolation so profound it seemed to wear away the very fabric of reality. Nowhere is this more true than at the Rock of Ages Lighthouse. Standing on a skeletal finger of granite, a few miles off the coast of the remote Isle Royale, it is one of the most isolated and exposed outposts on the entire Great Lakes. For years, its powerful beam has cut through the fog and storms, guiding ships away from the treacherous reefs that lie just beneath the surface. But according to the stories passed down through generations of sailors, the lighthouse does not just ward off ships. It also attracts something else, something from the deep. The tale speaks of a keeper in the early 20th century, a man of steady nerve and quiet disposition. His first few months at the post were uneventful, marked only by the lonely routine of polishing the lens, winding the clockwork, and recording the weather in his log. But then, things began to change. It started subtly, a persistent feeling of being watched, even when he was alone inside the lantern room, 100 feet above the waves. He would dismiss it as a trick of the mind, a symptom of the solitude. Then came the sounds. On calm, windless nights, he would hear what sounded like footsteps on the iron spiral staircase below him, slow and heavy. But when he would call out or descend to investigate, he would find nothing. The only sounds would be the gentle lapping of the water against the rock and the frantic beating of his own heart. The phenomena grew more brazen. The light in the lantern room, a marvel of mechanical precision, would inexplicably dim or flicker during the darkest hours of the night, as if a hand were being passed in front of it. He would hear a mournful sigh carried on the wind, a sound that was distinctly human and filled with an ancient sorrow. The keeper's log entries, once neat and professional, became erratic. He wrote of seeing a large, dark shape moving in the water at the base of the lighthouse, something that was not a log or a shadow, something that seemed to be circling, watching him. He felt a malevolent intelligence studying him, testing him. The supply boat that arrived one spring morning found the lighthouse empty. The keeper was gone. His log was left open on his desk. The final entry was a nearly illegible scrawl. It read, "It never sleeps. The light is an eye, and it hates the eye. It wants the dark to return. It wants to be alone." The official report listed the keeper as having been swept off the rock by a rogue wave, a tragic but plausible accident. But those who know the lake believe otherwise. They believe the unseen presence, the ancient consciousness of Lake Superior itself, cannot abide the steady, intrusive gaze of the light. It sees the lighthouse as a challenge, and it torments the lonely souls who dare to stand watch, driving them to madness or luring them to their doom in the cold, black water below. The influence of Lake Superior extends beyond its shoreline. It seeps into the ancient lands that rise from its waters, imbuing them with the same profound and unsettling mystery. There is no better example of this than Isle Royale, a national park, a designated wilderness. It is a world apart, an archipelago of dense forests, rugged ridges, and pristine inland lakes. To the visitor, it is a paradise, a chance to step back in time and witness a land untouched by modern development. But to those who look closer, it is an island of secrets, a place where the veil between our world and another feels perilously thin. And for some who venture into its deep woods, it is a place they never leave. Our story centers on a small group of experienced hikers who arrived on the island one summer, seeking the solitude and challenge it promised. They were not novices. They were meticulous planners, equipped with the best gear, detailed maps, and a deep respect for the wilderness. Their itinerary was logged with the park rangers, a multi-day trek through the island's remote interior, with designated campsites for each night. For the first few days, everything seemed to go according to plan. Other hikers briefly encountered them on the trail, noting their cheerful demeanor and professional setup. Then, they turned off the main path and headed into a more isolated section of the island, and the silence began. When they failed to arrive at the ferry dock on their scheduled departure date, park rangers were notified. Initially, there was not panic. Delays happen. Perhaps they were slowed by the terrain, or simply decided to extend their stay by a day. But when another day passed with no word, a full-scale search was launched. Rangers on foot, canine units, even aircraft combing the dense canopy from above, swept through the area designated on the hikers' itinerary. They found nothing. It was on the fourth day of the search that a ranger, navigating a little-used game trail, stumbled upon their last known campsite. The scene he discovered was not one of tragedy, but of pure, baffling mystery. The tent was neatly set up. Inside, their sleeping bags were laid out. A small stove and cooking pot sat near the fire ring, the remnants of their last meal still inside. Their backpacks, filled with food, water filters, and survival gear, were propped against a large pine tree. Everything one would need to survive in the wilderness was there. The only thing missing was the hikers themselves. There were no signs of a struggle, no torn clothing, no blood. Critically, there were no signs of an animal attack. The campsite was orderly, peaceful, as if the group had simply stood up in the middle of a quiet evening and walked away into the forest, leaving everything they owned behind. The most unsettling detail was the lack of tracks. The ground around the campsite was soft, and a light rain had fallen the night they were believed to have disappeared. There were tracks inside the camp, but none leading away from it. It was a physical impossibility. Search teams scoured a 5-mile radius, then 10. They found nothing. No clues, no bodies, no trace. Local theories began to surface. Old whispers that the park rangers dismiss but can never entirely stamp out. They speak of the island itself. They say it is a conscious entity, protective of its solitude. They say that sometimes, when people venture too deep into its heart, the island simply takes them, not through violence or accident, but by absorbing them, erasing them from the landscape as if they never existed. The hikers of Isle Royale were not lost to the wilderness. They were claimed by it, another chilling testament to the unseen forces that govern this isolated, ancient land. The mysteries of Isle Royale are not a recent phenomenon. They are woven into the very rock of the island, a story that began thousands of years before the first European ships ever sailed these waters. Long before the lighthouses and the park rangers, Ancient peoples were drawn to the island by a precious resource: copper, pure elemental copper, some of the richest deposits on the entire planet. For millennia, indigenous cultures, primarily the ancestors of the modern-day Ojibwe, mined this copper along a ridge known as the Minong Belt. They dug thousands of pits, using stone hammers and fire to extract the metal, which they fashioned into tools, ornaments, and sacred objects. Their relationship with the island and its treasure was one of deep spiritual respect. They understood that they were taking something from a powerful entity, and that a balance had to be maintained. When American prospectors rediscovered these ancient pits in the 19th century, they saw not a sacred history, but dollar signs. They saw a chance to exploit a vast untapped fortune. Large-scale mining operations began, blasting and drilling deep into the island's rock, chasing the rich veins of copper with industrial fervor. But from the very beginning, the work was plagued by a string of bizarre and unsettling misfortunes. It began with equipment failures. Brand new drills would inexplicably seize up. Hoist cables, inspected and certified as sound, would snap under normal loads. Strange accidents occurred with alarming regularity. Timbers meant to support a mine shaft would collapse for no apparent reason, often just moments after the workers had cleared the area. Men would fall ill with sudden, inexplicable sicknesses that doctors could not diagnose. A pervasive sense of dread began to settle over the mining camps. The miners were practical, hard-working men, not prone to superstition, but the relentless series of bad luck began to wear on them. They started to whisper about the ancient pits they had disturbed. They spoke of a feeling in the mines, a heavy, oppressive presence that felt ancient and hostile. They reported hearing faint drumming sounds coming from deep within the rock, even when all machinery was silent. The fear became palpable. Men started refusing to work in certain shafts, claiming they were cursed. The operations, which should have been wildly profitable, began to hemorrhage money, not just from the accidents, but from the simple fact that the workforce was becoming too terrified to do their jobs. Eventually, one by one, the mines were abandoned. The official records cite economic unviability, but the truth was far stranger. Rich, accessible veins of pure copper were left untouched because the unseen presence on the island had made it clear that the price for taking it was too high. To understand this fear, one must look to the Ojibwe legends the miners had dismissed as primitive folklore. The Ojibwe believe that Lake Superior and its copper are protected by a powerful spirit known as the Mishipeshu, or the underwater panther. This creature is described as a horned reptilian beast with the body of a great cat and a serpentine tail, its back covered in scales. The Mishipeshu is a being of immense power, the ruler of the underworld of the lake, and the guardian of its treasures. The ancient peoples understood that to take the copper was to take from the Mishipeshu itself. They did so with reverence, leaving offerings to appease the spirit and maintain the balance. The American miners, in their greed, showed no such respect. They blasted into the sacred ground, taking all they could without a thought for the guardian. The accidents, the illnesses, the all-consuming fear, these were not random chance. They were the deliberate actions of an ancient entity protecting its domain. The unseen presence of Lake Superior had a name, and its wrath had driven them from the island for good. No story of Lake Superior's wrath is more famous, more haunting, than that of the SS Edmund Fitzgerald, the legend of the mighty iron ore freighter, lost with all 29 hands during a ferocious storm on November 10, 1975, is etched into the very soul of the Great Lakes. It vanished without a single distress call. Swallowed by waves the size of mountains, its story immortalized in song and sorrow. For decades, the ship rested in the silent darkness, a tomb for its crew. But in 1995, an expedition journeyed down to the wreck with a singular, solemn purpose: to recover its bronze bell. It was an act of remembrance, a way to bring a piece of the lost souls back to the surface world, to create a tangible memorial for the families who had no graves to visit. The bell was painstakingly restored and placed in a place of honor at the Great Lakes Shipwreck Museum at Whitefish Point, Michigan. A replica, inscribed with the names of the lost crewmen, was placed back on the sunken vessel, but some believe that when they brought the bell up from the crushing depths, they brought something else with it. An echo, a lingering piece of the lake's cold fury. Since its installation, a quiet but persistent legend has grown around the bell, a story of a curse. Staff at the museum and sensitive visitors have reported strange occurrences in its presence. They speak of a sudden, inexplicable drop in temperature around the display, a chill that has nothing to do with the building's climate control. Others describe being overcome with an immense, crushing wave of sorrow when standing before it. A grief so profound, it brings them to tears, as if the collective anguish of that terrible night is still resonating within the metal. The most unsettling reports are those from after the museum has closed its doors for the night. Security guards have claimed to hear the faint, phantom tolling of a bell coming from the empty exhibit hall. A single, mournful chime that echoes in the silence. Lights in the immediate vicinity of the bell have been known to flicker and fail without any electrical cause. The theory among those who believe in the lake's power is a chilling one. They say the lake does not give up its dead, nor the relics that belong to them. The bell was part of the Fitzgerald, and therefore, it became part of the lake. By removing it, a sacred boundary was crossed. The bell, now on dry land, acts as a conduit, a focal point for the sorrow and the unquiet energy of the 29 souls lost, and perhaps for the possessive, unseen presence of the lake itself. It is a constant, solemn reminder that what Lake Superior takes, it intends to keep forever. From a ship that vanished without a trace into a phantom storm, to a lonely lighthouse keeper tormented by an unseen visitor. From experienced hikers who walked out of their campsite and into oblivion, to ancient mines protected by a vengeful spirit, and a haunted bell that still echoes with the sorrow of a lost crew. Each story, on its own, is a chilling mystery, but taken together, they paint a deeply unsettling portrait. They are not just isolated incidents of bad luck or tragic coincidence. They are pieces of a larger puzzle, and every piece points to the same terrifying conclusion. Something is in Lake Superior. Something ancient, intelligent, and possessive. It is a presence that has been felt for centuries, an entity that watches from the abyssal depths, guarding its secrets with a cold, relentless patience. Lake Superior is more than just water and rock. It is a repository of memory, a vast, liquid archive of all the lives it has touched and all the secrets it has kept. It is a place where the veil between what is known and what is unknowable is incredibly thin. The stories we have shared tonight are just a few of the countless whispers that echo across its waves, passed down from one generation to the next. So we are left to wonder, what truly lies beneath those cold, dark waves? Is it the spirit of the Mishipeshu, still guarding its ancient treasures? Is it a collective consciousness, born from the countless tragedies it has witnessed? Or is it something older, something nameless, that we can never hope to comprehend? We want to hear your theories. What do you believe is the source of these chilling mysteries? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. If these stories from the deep have sent a chill down your spine, please like this video and share it with someone else who dares to look into the dark. And remember, the world is full of mysteries waiting to be uncovered. Until next time, be careful when you stand by the water's edge. Because on the shores of the Great Lake, the water is always watching, and it never forgets.